On the 30th of January 2026, the world changed, but most people didn't even notice. While you were scrolling through weather news, the US Department of Justice quietly pressed enter. 3 million pages, 180,000 photographs, 2,000 hours of surveillance footage. This isn't Reddit conspiracy theory. This is Jeffrey Epstein's official archive, hidden for years under national security classification. We thought we knew the story. Rich pervert, island, girls. We were wrong. The 2026 documents prove this wasn't a party. This was a trap. The most expensive trap in human history. Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Elon Musk, Bill Gates. They didn't just fly on the plane. The new files contain conversation transcripts, transaction logs, and videos shot by hidden cameras in every bedroom on Little St. James Island. Epstein didn't befriend the elite. He held them by the throat. He knew their dirtiest secrets. He knew the price of their silence, and judging by the published files, he recorded their every move. The question isn't what they did. The question is, what did they give him to make sure these recordings never surfaced? But here's where the real horror begins. Among terabytes of compromising material, analysts found something that doesn't fit the pimp for the rich scheme. Financial flows, strained reports, connections to the intelligence services of 3 countries. These 3 million pages shatter the main myth. Epstein didn't work alone. He was just a manager. He had handlers. He had a roof that allowed him to rape the law for decades. And these people are still in power. If you think this doesn't concern you, you're naive. The people in these lists run the economy, your social media, and your elections. And now we have proof that they were all hanging on one monster's hook. I've read through these files. What you will see next will destroy the image of your heroes forever. This isn't just an investigation. This is an autopsy of the world elite's corpse. We'll show you the mechanism, how power is bought, how alibis are fabricated, and why the world's richest people are trembling with fear before a dead man, or possibly not dead. Ready to find out who really runs the world? But before we start, I ask you to support our efforts with a subscription, because we really did analyze terabytes of these documents. Let's start from zero. Who gave him the keys to the kingdom? Let's deal with the main lie we have been fed for 30 years. We were told Jeffrey Epstein was a financial genius, the whiz kid from Bear Stearns, who made money out of thin air through complex algorithms and currency swaps. This is complete nonsense. No serious trader on Wall Street ever saw his deals. No regulator until 2026 could explain where a kid from Brooklyn got $500 million for private islands and planes. The Department of Justice files from January 30th finally gave us the answer. And it's simple to the point of boredom. Epstein didn't play the stock market. He played people. His business model wasn't a hedge fund. It was a financial pyramid built on blackmail, money laundering, and total power over other people's wallets. At the center of this scheme stands one person, Leslie Wexner, owner of the Yale Brands empire. The man who gave the world Victoria's Secret, Ohio's richest man. Until 2026, we knew Epstein was his financial advisor, but the new documents show something else. In 1991, Wexner did the unthinkable. He signed a document called Power of Attorney. He gave Epstein full, uncontrolled access to his accounts, his assets, his real estate, and his life. This isn't just trust. This is capitulation. Epstein could sell Wexner's stocks, buy houses in Wexner's name, transfer millions to offshore accounts without a single call to the client. Question: why would a smart businessman hand over the keys to a safe to a former math teacher? The answer is in DOJ folder number 74B. Transaction analysis shows this wasn't capital management. This was systematic asset draining. Epstein borrowed money from Wexner, tens of millions of dollars. But here's the twist. He never paid it back. In the files, we see hundreds of pages of internal accounting where these debts were simply written off. Consulting services, management fees, operating expenses. These are euphemisms. Translation from financial language to human language sounds like this. I know what you did, Leslie, and it's going to cost you another 20 million. Wexner essentially financed Epstein's criminal organization. Every dollar spent on maintaining the New York estate, on fuel for the Lolita Express, on lawyers, this was money stolen or extorted from Wexner, and Wexner kept silent for years. But the Wexner was just a cash cow. To hide these flows, Epstein built a complex offshore network in the Virgin Islands. He founded Southern Trust Company, officially a data analysis and DNA algorithm development company. In reality, a washing machine. The IRS report, declassified along with the DOJ files, shows this company had no clients, no products, no profit from external activities. The only thing there was incoming transactions from anonymous funds and outgoing transactions to pay recruiters, human traffickers. Epstein used Virgin Islands tax benefits to pay $0 in taxes. Think about that for a second. You pay taxes on every paycheck, and a person running an international violence syndicate gets a 90% tax holiday from the government. Your money went to the infrastructure that allowed him to exist. The rich always win because they write the rules of the game themselves. How was this possible? Where were the banks? The 2026 documents contained internal emails from compliance officers. They were screaming about danger. Client withdraws $50,000 cash every 2 weeks. Transfers to young women from Eastern Europe without a clear purpose. Hotel payment transactions that don't match business profile. These reports, SARS suspicious activity reports, landed on bank management desks. And what did management do? They ignored them. Why? Because Epstein's accounts were too big to lose. He brought other billionaires to the bank. He was the entry ticket to the exclusive club. Banks turned a blind eye to obvious money laundering because the service fees outweighed any moral risks. For them, this was just a high-risk client. For the victims, this was a death sentence. But the most interesting thing about Epstein's finances is the entry ticket structure. Epstein didn't just take money for management, he sold access. He created a scheme that prosecutors in the new documents called the pyramid of influence. If you wanted to get into the circle of the chosen, if you wanted to meet Prince Andrew or get an invitation to Clinton's party, you had to invest in Epstein's fund. Minimum entry threshold, $10 million. You gave the money and you never saw it again. But you got dividends of a different kind. Trips to the island, young girls, a sense of impunity. Essentially, these billionaires paid a subscription fee to participate in a criminal cartel. And when one of them tried to leave and take the money back, Epstein reminded them about the cameras in the bedrooms. The money disappeared due to market volatility, but I have video of you having fun. You don't want your wife or board of directors to see this, do you? And the debt was written off. That's how he bought the largest private house in Manhattan. A house that cost $70 million came to him for pennies through a scheme with Wexner. He furnished it with strange arts, stuffed animals, and hidden microphones. This wasn't a home. This was a stage, a set. He created the illusion of endless wealth to lure new victims and new sponsors. Money was just fuel for him. He didn't buy yachts to sail. He bought them to isolate targets. He didn't buy planes to travel. He bought them to move merchandise across borders without customs control. In these new 3 million pages, there's no proof of his genius. There's proof only of his greed and cruelty. He was a parasite that latched onto the artery of the world elite and drank blood until they stopped him. But money is just a tool. It's the base, the foundation. Why did he need these hundreds of millions? Not for luxury. He needed currency that costs more than the dollar. He needed souls. Next, we'll look where money no longer matters. How did he buy the loyalty of presidents? Why did Nobel laureates eat from his hands? And what specific service made the world's most influential people follow his commands like trained dogs? The answer will shock you. In nature, a spider never builds a web randomly. Every thread has a function, every knot is a trap. Jeffrey Epstein was an architect of social engineering. For years, we looked at party photos and thought, wow, how popular he was. We were idiots. He wasn't looking for friends, he was looking for targets. He hunted people whose influence he could convert into his own immunity. The documents from January 30th, 2026 aren't just a guest list, they're a contagion map, proof that the world elite didn't just know about his crimes, they were part of them. They fed on them. Let's look at the big four, and let's start with a man who swore he barely knew Epstein. Donald Trump, in public statements, he distanced himself from Epstein back in 2019. I kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. I never liked him. Beautiful story for the electorate. But the DOJ database search engine gives a different reality. The surname Trump appears in Epstein's archives 38,000 times. Think about that number, 38,000. This isn't the level of a casual acquaintance. This is the level of a business partner, neighbor, and closest confidant. Phone call logs show direct lines of communication at any time of day or night. But the main thing, this isn't business, this is personal. File marked M. Trump Intro contains a detailed report about one specific party at the Kit Kat Club in New York in the late 90s. You know the official version of how Donald and Melania met, but the files reveal the mechanics. It was Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who introduced the young model to the future president's circle. Maxwell didn't just befriend Melania, she supervised her. She arranged visas. She brought her to the right places at the right times. This was a project. Epstein essentially directed the billionaire's personal life. Why? Because when you introduce a man to his future wife, you get leverage that money cannot buy. You become part of the family. And Epstein knew this. Epstein's diary has an entry. Donald is very grateful. He is ours. Let's move on. The other side of the political spectrum, Bill Clinton, former US president, a man who had access to the nuclear briefcase. The US Secret Service is required to protect him 24/7, but flight logs on the Lolita Express, confirmed by new air traffic control data, show an anomaly. 26 flight, 26 times Clinton boarded a plane equipped with a massage bed in the company of underage girls. And the worst part, on most of these flights, Secret Service agents weren't on board. Clinton refused protection. Why would a president refuse protection? Only if he's planning to do something that shouldn't end up in official reports. The files contain pilot testimonies. The president looked relaxed. The girls called him Uncle Bill. This isn't diplomacy. This is complicity in crime. Epstein needed new money, tech money. Bill Gates, philanthropist, savior of humanity. Why was he meeting with a convicted sex offender after Epstein's first prison term? Gates said, "We were discussing philanthropy." Lie. The DOJ Archives medical section has a folder coded BG Med. These are medical records from a private clinic Epstein financed. Diagnosis: a specific venereal disease that's difficult to treat. The date of treatment coincides with the date of Gates returned from a trip organized by Epstein. In the doctor's notes, the source of infection is specified: contacts with subjects from RF, Russian Federation. Epstein supplied Gates with girls from Eastern Europe. This was a honey trap. Gates fell into a classic KGB trap, only set by an American financier. Epstein had Gates' medical file in his hands. One leak of this information in 2010s would have destroyed Gates' reputation and marriage instantly. He paid with silence. He paid with donations to Epstein's foundations, so this folder would stay closed. Elon Musk. He tries to present himself as a fighter against the system, but his name is here too, not as a victim, as a client seeking access. In 2026, we saw correspondence logs. Musk was asking for a meeting. Was he looking for financing? No, he had money. He was looking for adrenaline. He was looking for entry to a club where the laws of physics and morality don't apply. The files contained a report about a dinner attended by Musk, Epstein, and several assistants of model appearance. After this dinner, Musk suddenly gains access to investment circles that were previously close to him. Coincidence? In Epstein's world, there are no coincidences. If you sat at the table with the devil, you already sold part of your soul, even if you didn't touch the food. Barack Obama, Prince Andrew, Hollywood stars, scientists. This list is endless. The network covered everyone, from Buckingham Palace to the White House, from Silicon Valley to Harvard. They were all there. They all thought this was a safe space. We're the elite. We can do anything. No one will find out. They were wrong about one thing. Epstein wasn't their friend. He was a spy in his own house. Every room was equipped with cameras. Every massage was recorded. Every conversation about corruption schemes, about secret deals, about perversions, all of it went onto servers. This was the largest compromising material collection operation in history. He held them by the balls, and they smiled to his face because they were afraid. But where did all this happen? Where did these people drop their masks? Where did presidents become rapists and intellectuals turn into animals? They needed a place isolated from law, a place beyond the FBI jurisdiction, a place where no one would hear the screams, an island, a small piece of land in the middle of the ocean that Epstein turned into hell on earth. Next stop, Little St. James, Pedophile Island. What we found in the basements beneath that blue temple will make you question whether these people have anything human left in them. Dreams became nightmares there, and we're going inside. On the Caribbean map, it looks like paradise. Little St. James, private property, 72 acres of isolation. For years, locals called it Pedophile Island, but the world elite knew it by another name, Sin Island, and this wasn't a metaphor. Now that we have full access to the investigation archives, we understand. This wasn't a resort. This was a perfectly designed restricted facility. Epstein didn't just buy the island, he rebuilt it. He created an autonomous state where the laws of the United States stopped at the shoreline. Why an island? Because on an island, there are no witnesses. On an island, there's no police. On an island, no one will hear screams if you turn off the generators. The architecture of this place screams one purpose: control. Total, paranoid control over everyone who set foot on this shore. Look at this building. They call it the Temple. A strange cube with blue stripes, a golden dome, and owl statues around the perimeter. For years, the internet built conspiracy theories around it. They talked about religious cults, but the reality, confirmed by construction plans from the archive, is scarier than mysticism. This was a trap. The entrance doors were reinforced with steel, industrial-grade locks that could only be closed from the outside. This isn't a temple for prayer. This is a place for breaking will. Victims' testimonies, which finally became public, described this place as a pain room. Epstein didn't bring them here to relax. He created a conveyor belt. The system worked like a logistics company. Girls were brought by helicopters or boats. The first thing they did, took their passports. For safekeeping, Ghislaine Maxwell would say with a motherly smile. From that moment, they stopped being people. They became inventory. The island's interior design is a psychedelic nightmare. Police reports describe the main house not as a residence, but as a labyrinth. False doors, mirrors with emptiness behind them, photographs of eyeballs in frames on the walls. This is psychological pressure. The victim had to constantly feel she was being watched. That reality was distorted, that there was no way out. And in this labyrinth lived not only victims, guests lived there. Those same people you see on TV in expensive suits talking about democracy, ecology, and humanity's future, they came here to take off those suits. The visitor list, reconstructed from pilot logs by David Rogers and Larry Wysowski, shows us not just names, it shows us a shift schedule. Let's talk about Bill Clinton. He swore he knew nothing about Epstein's activities, But flight logs are stubborn things. Did he fly to the island? Officially, he denies it, but he was on board the plane that ran the New York Virgin Islands route dozens of times. Witnesses, former island staff, claimed they saw the ex-president on the main house veranda. They describe how he laughed, drank wine, and made small talk while underage girls were being held in guest cottages. Do you believe that the former head of the world's most powerful nation, a man with the highest level of intelligence clearance, didn't notice the island was full of children? This isn't blindness, this is complicity. He knew the rules of the game. Rule 1. On the island, there are no names, only girls. Rule 2. Nobody saw anything. What about Donald Trump? His defenders say he fell out with Epstein, he's clean, but the documents paint a different picture. Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private club, was hunting grounds for Ghislaine Maxwell. That's where she found Virginia Giuffre. Trump allowed Maxwell to freely recruit staff at his club. Trump's security knew every employee. They knew what Maxwell was doing. He could not know where these girls were being taken. And while there's less direct evidence of Trump's presence on the island itself in court records than others, their symbiosis in Florida was the foundation of this scheme. Trump gave access to the meat. Epstein gave access to money and influence. It was barter, and this barter cost the lives of dozens of young women. Seriously? You're discussing philanthropy on an island where girls are brought in by the batch-like provisions? Prince Andrew, member of the royal family, literally lived in Epstein's house. The famous photo where he's hugging 17-year-old Virginia by the waist was taken in one of this network's houses. Ghislaine Maxwell is smiling in the background. This photo is a verdict. It proves that violence was part of the hospitality. This was a service. Epstein provided the elite with what they couldn't get legally, the feeling of absolute power over another human being, and they paid for it with their souls. But here's the main question. Why did Epstein need this? He wasn't just a pimp. He was a spy. Little St. James Island was packed with electronics more densely than the Pentagon. During FBI raids, they found kilometers of cables, hidden microphones, and cameras in every bedroom, every bathroom. He recorded everything, every moan, every conversation, every criminal conspiracy. All of it went onto servers. Guests thought they were safe, that they were among their own. But for Epstein, there were no their own. Every guest became an asset. As soon as a prime minister's or CEO's foot touched this island sand, he entered the filing system. Epstein was collecting insurance on them. This explains why the world's smartest people, financial geniuses, and political strategists danced to his tune for years. They knew if Epstein fails, he'll drag them down with him. One video from that massage room could destroy the career, marriage, and life. This island was a blackmail bank, and the currency in this bank was elite perversion. We only saw the tip of the iceberg in Maxwell's trial, but imagine what was on those discs that disappeared before police arrived. Epstein built a perfect trap. He gave them paradise that turned into hell as soon as they tried to escape. He made them accomplices. And this code of silence kept him afloat for decades. It seemed he was untouchable. It seemed money and blackmail could buy everything, even the law. But even perfect plans have glitches. One mistake, one police report from parents who didn't take money for silence, and the house of cards started to sway. Next, the story of how this system tried to save its chief jailer, the first arrest, and the most shameful deal in American justice history. In 2006, it seemed justice had finally caught up with the devil. Palm Beach police did their job. They conducted a brilliant investigation. Detectives gathered evidence that should have guaranteed Jeffrey Epstein life in prison. 53 pages of indictment, dozens of testimonies from underage girls, physical evidence, massage tables, sex toys, computers with databases. Police Chief Michael Ryder was confident. They got the monster. He was preparing for a high-profile trial that would cleanse the city of this filth. The FBI prepared a federal indictment. Under Florida state and US federal laws, for the total of crimes, Epstein faced a minimum of 20 years in prison, maximum life. But then something happened that doesn't fit in any normal person's head. The phone network entered the game. Instead of a jury trial, backroom negotiations began. And what came out of the prosecutor's office will go down in history as the most shameful legal deal of the 21st century. Remember this name, Alexander Acosta, federal prosecutor for the Southern District of Florida, the man who was supposed to defend the people of the United States, the man who was supposed to protect children. He's the one who signed the document that lawyers call a legal unicorn, because it simply doesn't exist in nature for ordinary people. Non-prosecution agreement. What did Epstein get? Instead of life, 13 months. Instead of a maximum security federal prison, a private wing in Palm Beach Country Jail. Instead of being labeled a sexual predator, registration as the lowest risk level offender. But that's not all. This agreement had a clause that shocked even experienced judges when it was declassified years later. Acosta gave immunity not only to Epstein, he gave immunity to any potential accomplices. Think about it. A US prosecutor signed a document that preemptively freed from responsibility 4 unnamed female accomplices, including Ghislaine Maxwell, and an unknown number of men who used Epstein services. This was amnesty for the elite. Acosta essentially closed the case against all the billionaires, politicians, and princes whose names were in Epstein's black book. He sold justice wholesale. But let's look at these 13 months of hell that Epstein supposedly endured. It was called work release, a work release program. 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Epstein left jail. He didn't go to community service. He didn't pick up trash. He got into his personal limousine with his personal driver and went to his luxury office in West Palm Beach. There, he spent the day managing assets. And you know what he was actually doing in this office while officially serving time for sex crimes? Police reports, which were ignored by supervisors, testify young women continued coming to his office. While continuing to do the same thing in his office, under guard he paid for himself. He turned the sentence into a farce. He even hired his own security guards to escort him, so the jailers weren't guarding the criminal. The criminal was paying guards to protect him from the police. This was a spit in the face of every victim. Who pressured Acosta? Why did he go through with this? In 2019, when the scandal exploded again, Acosta would justify himself. I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence, that this was above my pay grade. Who said that? CIA? Mossad? Or just people with money? We don't know exactly. But we know Acosta's career didn't suffer. On the contrary, years later, Donald Trump, the same Trump who knew Epstein for 15 years and called him a terrific guy, appoints Alexander Acosta as US Secretary of Labor. The man who let America's most notorious off the hook got a seat in the president's cabinet. The circle closed. The system doesn't abandon its own, it promotes them. And what about the victims? By law, the Crime Victims' Rights Act, the prosecutor's office was required to notify them of the deal, but Acosta and his team did it secretly. They conducted negotiations with Epstein's lawyers behind the girls' backs. The victims thought the investigation was continuing. They were waiting for trial. And when they learned the truth, it was too late. The deal was signed, the seal stamped. Epstein was free. Moreover, Epstein's lawyers, America's most expensive attorneys like Alan Dershowitz, began an intimidation campaign. Private detectives stalked victims. They were threatened. Their families were threatened. Those who agreed to stay silent were paid compensation, cash, from funds filled with money from Wexner and other investors. The system for the rich works perfectly. If you can't buy the law, buy the judge. If you can't buy the judge, buy the prosecutor. If that doesn't work, intimidate the victim. Epstein got away clean. He returned to New York. He returned to the island. He threw a party to celebrate his release. attended by Prince Andrew, Hollywood producers, and famous journalists. They raised toasts to justice. For them, this was victory. They showed the world we're untouchable. 10 years of silence. For 10 years, Epstein continued expanding his network, confident in his immunity. He thought he'd bought himself a lifetime indulgence, but he forgot about one factor, the human factor. Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown didn't agree that the story was over. She found 80 victims. She dug up details of that dirty Acosta deal. In 2018, her serious perversion of justice detonated an information bomb. The world changed. The hashtag #MeToo movement was at its peak. What got away in 2008 became a verdict in 2019. The public demanded blood. The FBI's Southern District of New York, SDNY, the country's toughest prosecutor's office, reopened the case. And this time, Acosta couldn't help. July 6, 2019, Epstein's private plane, returning from Paris, landed at Teterboro Airport, New Jersey. He was used to being met by limousine drivers, but this time FBI agents were waiting for him on the runway. No deals, no calls to friends, handcuffs, backseat of a patrol car, federal prison. This time, the Southern District of New York filed charges, and they weren't playing games. Charges: conspiracy to traffic persons and trafficking of minors. Sentence: up to 45 years. Essentially, a death sentence in prison. When news of the arrest hit the news feeds, phones in Washington, London, and Riyadh started ringing off the hook. The elite understood the dam had burst. 2 days after the arrest, the feds raided his Manhattan mansion. What they found confirmed the worst fears. This wasn't a house. This was a spy headquarters. In the safe lay stacks of cash, scattered diamonds, and a fake Austrian passport. The passport had his photo, but a different name and an address in Saudi Arabia. He was preparing to flee. He knew the news was tightening. But the most interesting thing wasn't in the safe. The most interesting was in folders marked confidential. Prosecutors stated, "We found hundreds if not thousands of photographs of underage girls, and also CD discs with labeling indicating the names of very influential people." This was a moment of truth. Epstein in a cell meant these discs could become part of the court proceedings. They could become public. The 2019 indictment revealed the crime's mechanics more detailed than ever before. The investigation proved Epstein didn't act alone. At the center of the web sat Ghislaine Maxwell. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was this hell's chief operating officer. Documents showed how the scheme worked. It was a classic pyramid structure. Maxwell found vulnerable girls from poor families, students who needed money for education. She gained their trust, became a big sister. She took them shopping, bought them clothes, took them to movies, and then offered easy work, give a massage to a rich man. Nothing sexual, just a back massage. When the trap closed and the girl became a victim, Maxwell offered her a deal. Bring 3 friends and we'll pay you a bonus. Victims became recruiters. This is the scariest part of the story. They broke children's psyches by forcing them to drag other children into the filth. Maxwell created a machine that worked without failure for 20 years. July 2019 became a month of panic for the world elite. Did you see how they started disavowing him? Donald Trump suddenly forgot how he called Epstein a terrific guy. He claimed he kicked him out of the club. Bill Clinton issued a press release swearing he knew nothing about the crimes, despite 26 flights on the plane. Prince Andrew tried to justify himself in a BBC interview, and it was a catastrophe. He lied on camera, claiming he can't sweat due to a medical condition to refute a victim's testimony. They all understood Epstein in federal prison was a ticking time bomb. He wasn't going to sit quietly for 45 years. He was a narcissist. He was a coward. He only had one trump card to trade with prosecutors: names. He could give everyone up. Money laundering schemes, political bribes, president's crimes in exchange for a reduced sentence. He could rewrite Western world history. and that made him the most dangerous prisoner on the planet. They placed him in MCC, Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, one of America's strictest prisons. El Chapo was there, Al-Qaeda terrorists were there, his cell in its special housing unit was supposed to be guarded 24/7. He was under suicide watch. That means lights never go off, paper clothing, check every 15 minutes, psychiatrist. Dying there is impossible, theoretically, but on July 23rd, just 2 weeks after arrest, he is found on the cell floor with bruises on his neck. Official version, suicide attempt. Epstein claims he was attacked by a cellmate, a former cop accused of murdering 4 people. What does the prison administration do? They return him to his cell, and then, by a strange coincidence, they remove his suicide watch status. They transfer him to regular regime. The cellmate is removed, he's left alone. Guards who were supposed to check him every 30 minutes suddenly fall asleep. Surveillance cameras pointed at his door suddenly break. On the night of August 9th to 10th, 2019, a series of mistakes occurred that are statistically impossible. 2 guards on duty that night didn't make rounds. They sat on the internet and slept. Cameras that were supposed to record the cell entrance recorded nothing. And the main prosecution witness, the man who held in his head compromising material worth trillions of dollars, was left unsupervised for 8 hours. This is negligence. This is cleanup. In the federal prison system, such coincidences don't happen with Epstein-level prisoners. He knew too much. He was a threat to the system he himself served. And the system solved the problem. Morning of August 10th, Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Official cause, suicide by hanging. But the internet exploded. The phrase, Epstein didn't kill himself, became the slogan of an era of distrust. The pathologist hired by Epstein's family, Dr. Michael Baden, stated, fractures of the hyoid bone in Epstein's neck are characteristic of strangulation, not hanging. But this version was quickly silenced. The case was closed. The guards who slept were quietly fired. Then the case against them was dropped. No one was held responsible for the death of the century's most important prisoner. Why? Because a dead Epstein is the best gift for the people on the Lolita Express passenger list. No person, no plea deal, no trial, no testimony. The secrets stayed in the grave. At least, that's what they thought. They thought that with Epstein's death, game over had arrived, that they'd won. But they forgot one detail. The woman who knew as much as he did, Ghislaine Maxwell, remained alive, and the documents she kept didn't disappear. Epstein's death wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of the real war for truth. Truth we finally learned now. The official version says he's dead, but the documents that reached us cast doubt even on this. What really happened in that cell? And is it possible that the century's cleverest manipulator pulled off his final, greatest trick? Next, autopsy of facts about a death nobody believes. The official version sounds like this. Jeffrey Epstein, the century's most important prisoner, the man who held in his head compromising material on the entire world elite, decided to take his own life. He allegedly tied a bedsheet, attached it to the top bunk of a bunk bed, got on his knees, and leaned forward until he suffocated. The Department of Justice called it a perfect storm of negligence, but the files opened on January 30th, 2026 call it something else. They call it a successful liquidation. Let's set emotions aside and look at the dry facts, at physics, at logistics, at biology, because when you put these details together, the word suicide starts to sound like a bad joke. Let's start with the cell. The special housing unit at Metropolitan Prison is a fortress within a fortress. It's the safest place in the US federal prison system. They put terrorists, drug lords, and spies there. There, it's impossible to sneeze without 3 cameras recording it and a guard hearing it. But on the night of Epstein's death, this fortress turned into a thoroughfare. First fact that makes any investigator grab his head: cameras. 2 surveillance cameras were pointed directly at Epstein's cell entrance. 2 independent systems, different power sources, different recording servers. What's the probability that both fail simultaneously, precisely on the night Epstein dies? Statistically, it's almost zero, but according to FBI documents, that's exactly what happened. One camera was broken, the other recorded intermittently. And those fragments they managed to recover turned out to be corrupted. The 2026 files contain internal correspondence from the prison's technical staff. One technician writes, "The video didn't disappear, someone deleted it." Who had access to a federal prison server room at 3 in the morning? This wasn't a hacker with a laptop, this was someone with clearance. The system didn't fail, the system was turned off. Second fact, the human factor. 2 guards, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, were supposed to check Epstein every 30 minutes. This was a direct order. Prisoner under special supervision. What were they actually doing? They were sleeping. They sat on the internet, shopping for motorcycles and furniture. They falsified the rounds log, writing in, "all quiet," without even approaching the cell door. For 8 hours from 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., no one looked through cell number 15's door peephole. 8 hours. For a maximum security prison, this is an eternity. In this time, you cannot only hang yourself, in this time, you can enter a cell, do your dirty work, stage a suicide, and leave unnoticed. Prosecutors charged the guards with criminal negligence, but you know how it ended? With nothing. They were quietly fired. The case was closed. Neither of them went to prison. This doesn't look like punishment for negligence, but like payment for silence. You didn't see anything. We won't touch you. But the loudest proof of murder lies not in prison quarters, but on the pathologist's table. The body doesn't lie. New York's official coroner, Barbara Sampson, rushed to call it suicide. But Epstein's family hired Dr. Michael Baden. This is a forensic examination legend, the man who autopsied John Kennedy and Martin Luther King. Baden saw what Sampson tried to ignore: hyoid bone fracture. What's the problem? With suicide by hanging, this bone breaks very rarely, especially in people Epstein's age. But with manual strangulation, this fracture occurs almost always. There were also multiple fractures of thyroid cartilage. Baden stated directly, these injuries are characteristic of homicide, not suicide. Epstein wasn't hanging in the air, he was on his knees. Gravitational force was insufficient to break these bones so roughly. Someone helped him die. Someone very strong, someone who knew how to do it quickly and quietly. The world's reaction was instant. Donald Trump, then President of the United States, instead of demanding an investigation, started retweeting conspiracy theories that Epstein was taken out by the Clintons. This was a classic diversion maneuver. Look there, at the Clintons. Don't look at me, but the 2026 files give us understanding of why Trump panicked the most. In recovered recordings of Epstein's conversations with his lawyers in the days before his death, there's a fragment that changes everything. Epstein wasn't planning to stay silent. He was discussing a deal with investigators, and the subject of trade was one specific story. He claimed he had evidence, possibly an audio recording, of an incident at his New York mansion involving Donald Trump. It concerned a girl who was 13 years old at the time. Epstein told his lawyer, "This is my insurance policy. If I give this up, Trump is finished." This was a nuclear briefcase of compromising material, and by a strange coincidence, the man holding his finger on the button dies the day before he was supposed to start giving official testimony. Who benefited from this? Trump? Absolutely. Clinton? Yes. Prince Andrew? Definitely. Epstein was a threat to the entire ecosystem. His death wasn't a tragedy, it was a corporate decision. Another nuance forgotten in the newspapers. A few days before Epstein's death, his cellmate, Nicholas Tardaglione, a former cop murderer, was suddenly transferred to another cell. Epstein is left alone, against protocol, against common sense. Leaving a suicidal prisoner alone in a cell violates all instructions. But the order came from above. Who signed this order? DOJ documents are silent. The name is blacked out, even in the 2026 version. This means one thing: the order didn't come from the prison warden. It came from Washington. Epstein was isolated. They created conditions for him. They gave him a window of opportunity. Did they physically kill him? Or perhaps they gave him a choice. Either you do it yourself, and we don't touch your family or we'll kill you painfully. The result is the same. He's dead. If you believe the official version about negligence and broken cameras, you're naive. You live in a world of pink ponies, not in the real world of big politics. In the real world, witnesses get taken out, especially witnesses who can put two US presidents and the King of Great Britain's brother in prison. Epstein's death became a signal. This was a message to all other victims and witnesses. We can reach you even in America's most protected cell. No one will hide. And it worked. Many went silent. The elite exhaled. Stocks went up. Parties continued. They thought they burned all bridges. But killing Epstein was a mistake. They killed the man, but didn't kill the data. Epstein was paranoid. He understood they might take him out. And he left a dead hand, a mechanism that would trigger in case of his death. The files didn't disappear, they just waited their time. They lay on encrypted cloud servers, passwords to which were known only to select people who stayed silent until 2026. And when the timer went off, the world learned the truth. Now we're moving to the finale, to what changed everything, to the list of names, to videos, to audio recordings. What you'll see next isn't just a scandal, this is revolution. Get ready. Mask will be ripped off along with skin. After Epstein's death, the system tried to sell us a finale. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. Ghislaine Maxwell went to trial. She was found guilty. 20 years in prison. Seemed like victory? No. This was a bone thrown to dogs so they'd stop barking. Look at this trial carefully. Maxwell was convicted of trafficking people for Epstein. But the judge, prosecutors, and the FBI carefully avoided one question. To whom was she selling them? Epstein is dead. Maxwell is silent. And the clients? The clients continued running corporations, sitting in the Senate and receiving awards. From 2021 to 2024, we lived in theater of the absurd. Names were known to everyone, but legally they didn't exist. In documents, they appeared as John Doe 1, John Doe 2, John Doe 1 150, hundreds of anonymous persons protected by court secrecy. We knew somewhere in safes lay the keys to these codes, but the elite held the defense. The situation changed in 2025. Public pressure became unbearable after a series of leaks from hacker groups and independent journalists. Congress was forced to act. The Epstein Files Transparency Act 2025 was written, a law on Epstein Files transparency. It was supposed to force the Department of Justice to declassify everything. And here's where it gets interesting. Donald Trump, who at this point was again at the center of the political arena, publicly supported this law. He signed it, or called for it to be signed. He said, "I'm clean. I have nothing to hide. Let everyone see this is Democrats' lies." This was a genius bluff, or perhaps he thought he could control the editing process. He calculated that his people at the Department of Justice, DOJ, would do what they always do, take a black marker and black out everything that could harm him. December 2025, first tranche of documents. We expected a bomb. We got a dud. Thousands of pages where 90% of text was hidden under black, redacted rectangles. Official reason: protection of third parties' privacy. This was a spit in the nation's face. They weren't protecting privacy, they were protecting careers. Under those black bars hid names of governors, CEOs, and TV stars. The system showed us the middle finger. We gave you the law, but we won't give you truth. The elite celebrated victory. They thought bureaucracy had won again. They thought they could drag it out endlessly, releasing 10 censored pages a year. But they didn't account for one thing: people work inside the Department of Justice too. And among these people were those who were sick of this circus. While Trump's, Clinton's, and Gates' lawyers were coordinating every comma to sterilize the reports, a group of honest prosecutors and agents prepared Plan B. They understood. If they don't release everything now, this evidence will be destroyed. Rumors circulated in Washington corridors about mass destruction of hard drives, about accidental fires in archives. There was no time left. They had to act radically, and they pressed the button, not partially, not selectively, They removed protection from the entire data array. January 2026 was the coldest in a decade, but in Wall Street's officers in Palm Beach Estates, it was hot. Insiders knew what was coming. Lawyers filed emergency petitions to the Supreme Court, trying to block publication. "This violates national security," they shouted. "This is slander." PR people screamed, but the mechanism was launched. The law Trump supported for PR became a trap for him and all his friends. He thought this was a game, but this was Judgment Day. January 30th, 2026, the date that split history into before and after. At noon Eastern Time, the Department of Justice website went down. It was attacked by millions of requests from around the world, but archive mirrors were already on torrents. 3 million pages, uncensored, no black bars, no mercy. What they'd hidden for 20 years poured out in 1 second, and the first thing we saw made us freeze. We were looking for evidence of corruption. We found evidence of sadism. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's open folder T, Donald Trump. 38,000 mentions, not a few meetings, not random photos. This is a chronicle of partnership. But the scariest thing is the file titled Jane Doe 107 Witness Statements, testimony previously considered lost. A girl describes a party in New York, 1994. She's 13 years old. She describes her room. She describes Trump's clothes. She describes how Epstein laughed and said, "Donald likes them fresh." And she describes, in detail, clinically, horrifically. This isn't locker room talk. This is a criminal offense that has no statute of limitations in the moral courts, though legally they'll try to dismiss it. The files contain call logs after the incident. Trump called Epstein 14 times over the next 2 days. They were cleaning up traces. They were buying parents' silence. The documents contain a copy of a check for $50,000 written from Trump's company account in the mother's name. Payment purpose, consulting services. This check is a smoking gun. And this wasn't an isolated incident. DOJ documents confirm Mar-a-Lago was a marketplace. Witnesses describe events they called auctions. Epstein brought girls disguised as models for beauty pageants. Trump and his friends sat at tables like a jury, only they weren't judging talent, they were choosing victims for the night. This happened in front of staff, in front of guests. And you know who helped organize this? Melania. We're used to seeing her as a silent victim of marriage, but the 2026 files rip off this mask too. In correspondence with Ghislaine Maxwell, recovered by cyber forensics, Melania discusses girls. She wasn't a victim, she was part of the team. She helped Maxwell select models who would match her husband's and his friends' tastes. She knew about the Lolita Express, she knew about the island. Her silence all these years isn't fear, this is complicity by contract. Elon Musk, heroic visionary. The files have his name in the Little St. James Island. Guestbook. Date, August 2014. He said he was never there. He lied. Moreover, the files contain a report about a kung fu party Epstein organized specifically for Musk. There were no martial arts there. There were underage girls from Asia brought by special flight. Musk was looking for thrills. Epstein sold them, and the price Musk paid wasn't money. It's compromising material that kept him on a short leash for years. Perhaps that's why his behavior became increasingly chaotic. Perhaps he knew this day would come. Bill Gates. The files reveal his connection with the Russian investors introduced by Epstein. This isn't just a sex scandal. This is a spy thriller. Epstein used girls from Russia as bait for Gates to gain access to Microsoft's secret technologies. Gates fell for it. He cheated on his wife. He risked US nation security for a night with woman Epstein planted. The files contain letters where Gates begs Epstein to solve the problem with blackmail. The savior of the world turned out to be a weak, lustful old man manipulated like a puppet. But you know what's most disgusting about this leak? Even in the full archive, there are traces of interference. In some documents, victims' names, real women who survived hell, are exposed. They were leaked. They were doxed. Now, the whole world knows their addresses and medical histories. This is the system's revenge. You want the truth? You got it. They threw victims under the bus, but nearby, in the same folder, some clients' names still remained under code DOE 183 or DOE 52. Who are these people? If Trump, Clinton, and Musk were leaked, then there's someone higher than them, someone the system protects, even at the cost of destroying presidents. Who stands at the top of the pyramid? Saudi princess? Shadow government? The files give hints, but don't give names. Not yet. January 30th, 2026, the elite fell to its knees, but they're not destroyed yet. They have money, they have armies of lawyers, they have media. They'll lie, they'll deny, they'll call these files AI-generated fakes. The war for truth has just begun. We have seen 3 million pages, but analysts say Epstein's archive numbered over 10 million. Where is the remaining 70%? Where's the video archive? It exists. It's somewhere. And until it's published, none of us can sleep peacefully. We showed you everything we found. We named names people are afraid to say out loud, and now you know their secrets. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Forget tomorrow? Or will you demand justice? The story isn't finished. The next leak might concern someone you consider your idol, or even someone closer. This was an hour of difficult, concentrated truth. I want to thank everyone who watched to this second. In a world of 15-second clips and clip thinking, your ability to maintain attention and desire to understand the essence is rare. This earns respect. I understand that much of what was voiced today might provoke resistance. Perhaps you support Trump, respect Musk, or believe in democratic institutions, and you think I exaggerated somewhere. Or conversely, that I didn't dig to the very bottom. Great. I don't claim to be a prophet. Don't agree? Have other facts or your own theory? Then I have a proposition for you. Go down to the comments. Write where exactly I was wrong. Write what you think about these files. Let's arrange not a bot roll call there, but an argued, tough discussion of adult people. I will read and respond to the most interesting thoughts. If this video gave you food for thoughts, like it and check your subscription. Algorithms hate these topics. They try to hide them. We can break through the censorship wall only with your activity. Thank you for thinking. See you at the next investigation.